Hi. I was talking about, in this video, I'll be talking about this spouse as usual, right? What happens is, for the last 7 years, my mother has been paying the mortgage most of the time. There were other relatives, of course, that were involved. Now, this spouse goes up and down about anything that happens. If she got fired from one job, she went down, got got depressed a little bit. She gets hired, she gets happy. And I tell her, why do you worry so much about so many things? For the last 7 years, you still live in this house, and your mother-in-law has been paying all the bills. If you get fired from a job, your mother gives you money to pay all the bills. Now, she's a very proud woman, this spouse. She doesn't want to accept charity and things like that. But the way I look at it, we're all here on earth to help somebody. And that's why we were sent. All right? I'm the only person that I know of. Well, this spouse cooks it, and I'm the one that takes the food to my mother in her room. Nobody else in the world does it. I mean, sure, my mom gets her check, right, from the government or from somebody, I don't know. She gets her money, and if she lived in a nursing home, then her money would be taken away, and she probably wouldn't see the grandkids as often, and she wouldn't buy the things she wants to buy, which she really doesn't buy her things. I mean, she buys peanuts and cashews and things like that. She takes the kids to restaurants. So she's a happy, rich grandma, a grandma with cash. But I asked this spouse, why do you worry so much? Like this summer, she's had the whole summer off because even though she applied to, 15 places, I think, for the summer, only one of them hired her. But it was not in her best interests, because if you're going to be at a job at 6 o'clock in the morning all by yourself and it's all dark, and you have to accept the children for the child care, and you have to cook breakfast for them, and you have to turn on all the lights and unlock all the doors and make sure it's too much work for one person, in my opinion. And when you work with the school board or with the schools, when you show up at 6 o'clock in the morning, if that's the time that they show up, that's not her work hour though. But if that would have been her work hour, then there's at least 5 or 4 people there in just that one section where she is. And let's say the cafeteria. So she's not all by herself, which is, you feel safer in some way. At least you don't have to grab all the breakfast and feed all the kids and know how many kids are there, and it's too much work for one person. So she declined that job. But back to her, why do you worry so much? As the Bible says, the non-believers, they are just like that. So what should the Christians be? The Christians should have faith. I mean, I posted on Facebook, I joined another group about Christians that it's called accountability group or something. where they hold you accountable. But what I've seen in the first post that I've read, one lady was asking for prayer. So I told her to pray, but in thanksgiving that God would deliver her. And I tell her what God did for me. God took my mother out of jail. God took me out of a mental institution, and God loaned me my son, my dog, this beautiful room, spacious room. I'm not allowed to have posters on the wall. That's why I don't have any posters here. Because the spouse still wants to rent it, but nobody wants it. And then she wants to rent it. She wants me to get out of this room. But then she doesn't really want me in the house with her because she doesn't stand me. She can't stand me. Like in the sink, I have what? I have jeans. I have a bunch of dirty clothes, but eventually I'll grab them. I just took them off last night, hung them right there. I'll put them in the laundry another day. Some things that I do irritate her. The other day she spent the night when her dad was here, and she got upset because I was toasting my toast. 6 o'clock in the morning or something. Why am I making so much noise with the toaster? I'll tell her, no, just don't come live here. Don't go back to your house. You know, you can't sleep because my mother's snoring. Well, that's too bad. But don't go sleep at the other neighbor's house. Don't bother me over here. I mean, you know, I wake up with an erection every morning, and she wants to complain about my using the toaster. I'm not bothering you. Leave me alone. And I go to sleep with an erection every evening too. Speaking of erections, I always remember my classmate in gym class in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. We were there for 3 years at that school. I was there for 3 years at that school in Chicago. And what happened was, back then we used to exercise in gym class, all right? Really do exercise. I mean, we used to sweat. Yeah, I think we started sweating at that. Little kids, they can run all day and not sweat, but once you're in 6th, 7th, and 8th, you're the big kids. You're with the big kids there. You do sweat. And so all of us were lined up like 4 across, and then another line of 4 and another line of 4. And then the teacher said, it was a female PE coach. She became a nun, the last we heard. But she had this big, humongous breasts. And one of the kids there, Robert Farr, he died at 16. I'm not sure how exactly. I think he got shot. But he used to say, back then wrestling was famous. Fake wrestling. And so he used to say, I'm going to do the claw on Miss Specia's titty. And all of us used to crack up on that one. What happened next was we were all lined up, and over there you did what you were told, all right? When Hector gets an erection, and he's just lined up like a soldier, and then he looks down and he says, uh-oh. And all of us just start cracking up when we look over at him. He ran to the bathroom. And then the teacher said, where's Hector? None of us told her. Well, somebody said he's in the bathroom. But none of us told her what was wrong. That was the only thing I remember about that day in gym class. Oh, and when we were in that grade, I remember that in the lower grades, the girls used to do exercise with us. It must have been 6th, 7th, and 8th, because at that school, the boys did gym class by themselves one day, and the next day it was the girls. And so that was strange. I didn't know why they were dividing us like that. But then I did know about erections because Hector was one of the oldest. His birthday was January 20th, and the rest of us were. Where were we? Well, I was October, way after, so I was younger. Another thing about Hector, he taught me. He told the teacher that, well, the teacher asked him, "You were a fat kid when you were younger, right?" Because when we met him, or I met him, he was a bodybuilder. He didn't say anything, but he looked like a bodybuilder. You don't get those muscles just by. And he told the basketball coach, which was our 8th grade teacher, he said that he was the fastest runner at our tiny school of how many, one classroom in 8th grade, and how many boys were there? Maybe 12. 12 boys in the class. He was the fastest runner. But he was fast. He had muscles. And the bully in the class, he was Mark. And Mark was chasing Hector. This is the day that the transfer of power occurred, all right? All of us, well, I was so quiet, nobody bothered me, but the boys that were into spitballs and whatever they were doing, they followed Mark. Mark was tall, slim, a ninja practitioner or martial arts. And so Mark was chasing Hector around the room. And this was, I believe, 6th grade. And Mark had also kissed Lisa, all right? So like Mark was in the top of the class pecking order. And Hector was being chased by Mark around the room. The teacher was not there. And then Hector swung backwards, didn't even look. Or I think he did look finally. And he hit Mark in the glasses, and Mark sat down and started crying. And that was the beginning of the transfer of power. What happened next was, a few days later, right, I don't know exactly when, but we see Mark with his new glasses. And that's when the expensive glasses were $200, right? That was like, maybe now they would be $400. These glasses, when you walked outside, they would get dark. And they were circular. And when you walked inside the building, they would clear up. So Mark had his new glasses. I don't know if it was the following year that Mark begins again, or maybe it was the same year. Mark begins to punch like a boxer Hector on the arm. And Hector was against the blackboard. We were all making a line, but Mark is usually the leader, or even if he's not the leader, he goes up wherever he goes. Why we're alone in the classroom, I don't know. And Hector just grabbed Mark, put in a headlock, and leaned backward and hit Mark's head against the blackboard. Then Mark goes like this or something. Finally, Mark transferred out of school. Nobody ever heard of him. And Hector was the new king. Sort of. Hector was not into having power. He was into having fun. And then, yes, I think 7th grade was when the huge David came to join us. He was 180 pounds of just muscle. I was at 120, all right, or maybe even 115. Hector, maybe 125. And this guy, David, comes in. And he's 180 pounds. He was very narrow, but his chest was all the way out there. Now later on, I found out about David. He had brothers that were into weightlifting, so that's what happened. Besides his size. So David becomes the second fastest runner. Would you believe Hector could beat him with the short legs, but only by a tiny amount. And so it was a huge accomplishment for Hector to... I know he had big hamstrings. He looked irregular with his hamstrings. Now my mom used to say, don't do weightlifting because you'll be short. Alright, but I don't believe that's true. I don't believe it. Because, well, I haven't seen Hector. David did weights. He was 6 feet tall or about there. Oh, and I'll also mention Leo and Carlos. One time my mom didn't pay the tuition on time. So the 8th grade teacher told me, no mon, no fun. No money, no funny. And that was mean. Especially since he had worked with the people that feed those dying people, starving people in another country. He had worked with them. And the food was there in the lunchroom, but he didn't give me my little coupon. So a little, like a business card like that, and I would hand it to the lunch lady, and she would give me food. And they wouldn't let me go home, which was across the street, to eat. And I obeyed them, even though I knew I could outrun them and get to across the street, but I didn't want to get hit by a car. And so I sat among them, and I was not eating. And then Leo and Carlos gave me food that day. So I always remember those two Christian boys. Very nice. I'll also remember Teresa. Another boy in the classroom liked her, and I liked her too, but I didn't tell him. And well, he told me when we were like supposed to be praying at the church, because we used to be this is conversations we used to have when we were supposed to be praying at church. So who do you like? Well, I like that one. But everybody knew I liked Adriana because I had written her name on my binder, Trapper Keeper, and Adriana had scratched it off. I didn't know that she was somebody's cousin, and he had told on me. Alright, she was Leo's cousin, but I don't think it was Leo. Somebody else must have known about it. It was on the last page. She just scratched off her name. And then I later saw Adriana. She was with a guy that had a motorcycle, and the big brother of this guy, the motorcycle, got shot by the gangs, and he was an artist, Arnold Mireles, and he was going against the gangs, and the schools, one of them was going to be changed to his name. So if Philip H. Sheridan School Elementary, if that one changed to Arnold Mireles Elementary, then it was because of his speaking out against gang violence. And that's how he got shot, 30 years old or something, 35 maybe, who knows. This is after I left. So I'll also mention Ricardo. And Ricardo was big. He was chunky, but he was bigger than most of us. And I think it was in 7th grade by the classroom that I was in. Yeah, 7th grade. He put some paint on my book bag, and I was sitting next to him, and I told him something. I don't know what I said, something mean. And then he said, "Say it to my face." Then I said, I just did. But then it looked like he was going to hit me. So I ran around the room and Adriana saw me running away from Ricardo. And then Leo and Carlos, right? Leo, he was smaller. He may have been the smallest, slimmest guy in the classroom. But again, he won all these medals for cross-country running in high school. Later on, I saw him one time running. And what happened to Leo was, he said, at lunchtime he tells me, or somewhere he tells me, Daniel, that back in 4th grade I fought Ricardo? And I said, no. Oh, he mustn't have been this big. And then Leo says, no, he was bigger. We're finally catching up to him. That was comical. We're finally catching up to Ricardo. And then Ricardo lived only a block away. So I used to go with him. I used to go with pick up Alfredo, until he would open his window and say, all right, I'll be right down. And then we'd go on our bicycles. And then, since I knew that there was safety in numbers, then we would ride 1 block to Ricardo's house, and we'd say, come on, let's go for a bike ride. Let's go. And first Ricardo would say, how far? I said, how far do you want to go? And then finally we said, Cal Park. And then he would say, too far. Or I don't know if we said it or not. But then eventually we did get to go to the post office, which was nice because there was it was in the summer. There was probably, there were a couple of cars there in the parking lot, but just there and back. And that's what we used to do. There was a boy from another classroom that was older. He graduated, Ramiro, and he used to ride his bicycle with Alfredo and myself. All 3 of us were altar boys. And then the day I didn't go with them to Cal Park is the day that they traded bicycles for some reason. And then they made each other cry because either one of them was going too fast or the other one was going too fast, or one of them fell off the bike and hurt the other guy's bicycle, so the other guy hurt. Eventually they both picked up each other's bicycles and threw them all over the place. So I was the one that was in the middle, and when I was with them they didn't misbehave like that, but they were both bullies compared to each other. So then we all went our separate ways, I guess. So back to Teresa. She died, I heard, when she was 25 years old. She got hit by a truck while her boyfriend was changing a tire in the expressway. Oh boy. And of course, Robert Farr, I mentioned he died at 16, so I heard. And then Bobby, or Robert Ornelas, he was sent to prison. Now I did have a fight with Bobby because I used to have the glasses and I had the band on the back of my ears, right on the back, and he used to pull it. And so one time I finally snapped on him and I threw him to the floor, and he was laughing. Well, he was laughing before. And I threw him to the floor because I used to wrestle with one of my relatives. But Bobby was a boxer and I didn't land right. I was falling off us. Bobby threw so many punches, I must have been his right hand, right here, right above my eye. He wasn't hitting the eyeball, he was hitting above it. And I just looked at him And then I saw in his eyes, I didn't tell anybody, I saw in his eyes a woman crying, like his mother. And then I just said, that's it. But he was an excellent boxer. I mean, he just it didn't hurt me because he didn't want to. He hit me so many times, and I just stood there, but I kept looking at his eyes. He was into rap, yeah. I remember other friends, but these were the stories that changed my life. One of them, the Hector punch, I used it against two girls that were going to steal my bicycle. Only one of them was going to steal it. There were two black girls on Lakeshore Drive, up on a hill, and I was going up the hill, right? And they were both on the same side, but then one of them crossed to the other side. And I said, why would they do that? Why am I going to go between them? And they didn't really split up or move far enough away. And the big one was big, and the other one was shorter. And the short one ended up grabbing my windbreaker, and she had a windbreaker, I think, but I felt her hand on my ribs. And I just swung backwards without looking, because I had to control my brother's 10-speed bicycle to go down. And I punched her, and then when I went down, I looked back and I saw that I had punched her in the mouth because she was holding her mouth. So that Hector punch was very good. Well, I've always wanted to tell these stories to all my classmates. God bless you wherever you are. See you in the next world. There was a bully in 2nd grade, but he helped me one day because I was crying. I didn't know how to get out of the door, and so he showed me how to push the push bar. And the door opened. For some reason, I must have been in the bathroom when the bell rang and we all left. And then in a few seconds, the whole hallway was empty, and I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know which door to use, because I used to just follow without knowing where I was. I should have been a hint to myself that later on when I started driving, I used to get lost. Not in Chicago, because over there they have a perfect system for people like me, that they use the north, south, east, west and numbers instead of streets. Over here in Florida they have a bunch of street names. I'm like, that is the most useless thing. I mean, you drive 5 minutes and it's got another street name and it's the same street. So over here they split up the cities into every 10 blocks it's a new city. Every 5 minutes of driving it's a new city. And that doesn't help me, because if you're on this road 10 minutes, it's got a different name, and then you don't remember how to. It's lousy. Whereas in Chicago, 87th Street on the west was also 87th Street on the east, and you knew which street was the dividing street. I think it was State Street. So you knew how far you had to go. All right, take care of yourself. Be better than I am. Enjoy your life. Trust in your God, the one that created you and created this beautiful world, so we could all help each other